Hey, Fight fans, thanks for coming over to YouTube. Look, it's just me. I'm just going to ramble for literally like half an hour. I'm just so excited. Eternal MMA Hex Fight Series have dropped some major fights, and they impact the entire fight scene. So if you don't know anything about the sport, I mean, stick around because I explain it pretty well. But look, if you love the sport, it's a place to be. We've just had announced by Hex. Joseph Luciano versus Jono Micallef. We've got on Eternal Quillan Salkilld. He'll be back. Wes Capper's back. Dan Jones, if you remember him, 8-0, 9-0, undefeated. Amazing. He's back. Seb Szalay finally getting a huge opportunity. Like I said, we talk about Jono Micallef's opportunity. Matt Vaile fans, guys, I know that's supposed to be Luciano. That was supposed to be the fight. It's not happening. You're mad. And we're going to talk about it. Also, why not a little bit of Kitt Campbell? He wants a piece of Vaile, but does Vaile want him? Guys, stick around if you love Australian MMA. We're talking about it right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's been some news in the world of mixed martial arts. A few fights have been dropped. What I'm loving about this, if you're an Australian MMA fan, every time Hex does something, Eternal does something. Every time Eternal does something, Hex does something. There's starting to become a bit of a war brewing, which we like. And a good step forward in the war is having one man who is a champion or was a champion of another promotion heading over to another promotion and fighting for that belt. Of course, the headline fight that we're going to talk about, Joseph Luciano, who was the former, he hasn't, technically not dropped the belt, but let's be real, I think he has. You know what? I'll deal with it. He has, even though he says he hasn't. The Eternal MMA welterweight champion Joey Luciano is taking on Jono Micallef at Hex Fight Series 28, November 18th. Now, everyone is blowing up. Of course, they wanted Matt Vaile. That was the original fight. If you don't know, the original fight was Matt Vaile, who #1 fighter in New Zealand. Joey Luciano was deemed #1 fighter in Australia. Some might have even said Vaile was the king of both. He's a former Hex champion. He was supposed to take on Luciano at Eternal MMA in Sydney on UFC 293 fight weekend. And that was going to be an absolute cracker of a fight. It was really, we haven't seen it in a while, but it was really going to be the best versus the best. And then the winner moves on. It was really going to be that. Now, we got Joey Luciano coming on Monday. I normally don't announce guests until we've got it all recorded because you know how they can be, just organising interviews in general. But look, it's going to be a hell of a chat on Monday. I'm going to ask him all about this and all about why the fight fell through with Eternal. I can tell you it is contractual. It wasn't an injury. He didn't pull out because he was scared, like many of the Matt Vaile fans would say, which I can understand why they're passionate. Their man has been one of the best for so long, and he hasn't been as active as he would like to be. But look, everyone's always going to have their opinions on fighters. And let me tell you what, no one is scared. If you say anyone's scared, you're an idiot. This is not the UFC. There is not big money being thrown around. I can tell you this now. A champion, unless I'm wrong here, and I'm sure the promoters will tell me if I am, but you'd be lucky to get $1,500 to $2,500 for a title fight. So saying people are just too scared to fight is not a thing. It's not happening. Do people take alternate routes to sort of craft out their professional journey? Probably. But you can't blame them because at the end of the day, they're businessmen. But I can tell you this, that the Matt Vaile Luciano fight was going to happen. Both men were keen. Now, here's where it gets tricky because it fell out. Contractual reasons with Eternal. Something happened. We'll get Joey to explain it. But then Hex comes along. Obviously, they know that. And the big deal with Eternal was the fact that, you can't fight for another promotion when you're their champion. They're great with contracts. And look, still, I will state this with, I don't know, maybe in some alternate universe, they've patched things up and he's still the Eternal welterweight champion, and he's also fighting on Hex, but I don't believe that to be the case. There is actually word that people think that the reason why those contracts came in a long time ago is when Ricky Beechan won the 4-man heavyweight tournament and then fought on Hex and lost. And I don't think Eternal thought that looked good, which I think is valid. I actually agree with that. But having contracts on the regional level look very debatable and whatnot. But you can see why the businesses do it. It seems like a smart idea if you're a business. Protect your asset. Now, we move forward. Joey Luciano with Hex for the welterweight crown. He's taking on Jono Micallef. Now, you might want Matt Vaile. And look, Matt Vaile, if you check the Hex posts, if you check the post that I'll probably repost because I love the drummer, Matt Vaile does call out Luciano. Ginnon Sports, his agents, call it out. I do not believe, and this is where it gets weird, and if anyone's in the know, feel free to contact me and abuse me. I do not believe Matt Vaile was offered the fight. This is where it gets tricky, because I've either pissed off a lot of people just then, or I've gotten some good truth out there. I do not believe Matt Vaile was offered the fight. That's got nothing to do with Joey Luciano and Absolute MMA. I can tell you this now. He would not have said, no, I don't want to fight Vaile. I want to fight Jono Micallef. That wouldn't have happened. But at the same time, I do not believe he was offered it. Matt Vaile is obviously very vocal that he was not offered the fight. And for whatever reason, now maybe we'll talk to Hex, Jacob Watts, maybe there's a reason he wasn't offered it. You know what I mean? Maybe there's, conflicting dates. Maybe there's contracts, money, who knows, man. There's so many back end sort of things with this sort of stuff, so do not jump into the conclusion. But I would just say that he's not scared to fight Mr. Luciano, because fighting Jono Micallef is tricky, because you take on Matt Vaile, he's got the record, he's got the name, Jesus Christ, he's got the fans, they're all there. Why would you not? You beat him, you're in the UFC. I don't care. Like, it is a done deal as you can get. That really was 1-2. Jono Micallef's 4-0. Although that's a nice record, it's not. I think he's 17 on Tapology. Now, they're not always the best rankings. They have Jack Becker as a bantamweight. But look, it's interesting because Jono Micallef is a hell of a fighter. I personally think it's probably like that smidge too early. I would have liked to fight him to maybe like fight a Kitt Campbell, which interestingly enough, if you jump on the Hex post, has been calling out for a Matt Vaile rematch for a very long time. I can understand why Matt Vaile probably doesn't want to take it. Kitt's coming off a bit of a skid. It's a really, really tough fight. Kitt's a lot tougher than his record. He was once upon a time next in line as well. I think he's like 12-7, or I could be wrong there, but like it's maybe 14-7. But he's it's not the most desirable record to go after, and he's a really, really high caliber fight. He just lost to Kevin Doucet, who dominated in his UFC debut. So you can understand why Vaile probably doesn't want that fight. Doesn't do much for him. But yeah, like I said, Jono Micallef, he's almost getting like the Quillan Salkilld treatment. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but a few months back, Quillan Salkilld was climbing up the ranks. I think he beat Stephen, and his next fight was all of a sudden Blake Donnelly. And everyone was like, well, that's a bit too soon. Those people were me. And I love Quillan Salkilld. I love his manager, Jasmine. I love Ramel, his head coach, Cody Haddon, his teammate. Like, he's a Perth boy. I'm a Perth boy. I've been a big fan of Quillan. I was around when his amateur career, when he first had his amateur career. But I thought it was a bit soon in the narrative and whatnot. Now, he ended up taking out Blake Donnelly, who was a hell of a champion. You know, he pieced up David Martinez, who ironically is now the number one contender. Stopped him, I believe, with cuts, doctor's stoppage. And he put Quillan Salkilld put Blake Donnelly away in a minute. And he proved us all wrong, namely me. And now he's the king. And he was this close to being in the UFC. You know, he was on the road to UFC. That fight fell through in Singapore, where it's, you know, technically you're in the UFC, technically not. But he would have, I'm assuring you, he would have dominated and they would have signed him on the spot. But he's back. Ironically, got his own fight. But to sort of sum up this Hex one, it's huge for Jono Micallef. It's like the video game, you kill the guy, you take his loot. And Joseph Luciano, with all the loot, has everything to lose in this fight. I think it takes balls to take on a guy that's 4-0, especially when you know the whole of New Zealand is coming after you for not finishing not having the Matt Vaile fight happen. And like I said, hopefully that can happen down the road. Maybe the next fight, who knows? We'll find out from Hex if that was even offered, or what went wrong there. I would even like maybe Matt Vaile to take on Kitt Campbell. Just stay busy, do it. You know what I mean? It's hard enough for him to get a fight. Just get it, stay active. That's all he needs to be. And if Luciano wins, let's do that, and that's an even bigger fight. If Micallef wins, he'll be 5-0. He'll be the next big thing. I think he's very young. I could be wrong, but he's incredibly young. And he's absolute stud. What he did to Jack James as well, who's an up and comer in MMA. Jono Micallef is special. Do I think it's too soon in the narrative? Don't come at me in the comments although I do. I like the engagement. Skill level, Micallef's there. Narrative, I would have liked a few more fights. But hell of a challenge, hell of an opportunity. When opportunity knocks, the door should already be open. That should be how keen you are, and that is how keen Micallef is. So looking forward to that. Luciano, if you're the best in Australia, show it. Take care of Micallef, take care of him easy, and then we need the Vaile fight, and then move on and go on to bigger and better things. Now, we go back to the lightweight champion, the Eternal MMA lightweight champion, which, of course, Quillan Salkilld. Now, he's taking on, let me get this name right, I think it's Brett Pastore. And look, it's been an interesting... Quillan, when he won the belt from Blake Donnelly, he said that after he got the road to UFC, said he was going to go off, have that fight, come back, defend his Eternal MMA belt. He lived up to that. They did announce the winner of David Martinez and Jack Becker at Eternal MMA, 78 in Sydney. That was going to be the winner. And look, maybe some people did think Becker was going to win. I personally thought Becker was going to win. Love Martinez. I just thought it was Becker's time, and that would have had a mega fight. Quillan Salkilld, Perth boy. Jack Becker, Perth boy. Eternal 80, Perth. It would have been huge. It really would have been. Now, Martinez won. Still would have been a hell of a fight. But Martinez, of course, in all of these interviews, a lot of these guys, Matt Vaile included, Luciano, especially Martinez, I'm talking about now, head onto the YouTube channel or the podcast. Check it out. You can listen to all their stories, and you'll get a little bit more understanding about them and where they sit in the scene. But even Martinez, he basically was in a hospital weighing in. I don't know how okay that was. But look, it happened. He won the fight, proved everyone wrong. He was supposed to take on Quillan Salkilld as soon as possible. That obviously didn't eventuate. I believe an injury. I just think David's not medically cleared. But yeah, he will take on, where is the man? Brett Pastore, who is out of Tiger Muay Thai. I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about him. I don't. But I believe he's fought on 1FC. He's a really, really good MMA fighter. 28-year-old, 3-1. It's a tough test from New Jersey. But, if you want to be UFC ready, Quillan Salkilld should take him out. I don't really like, obviously, non-Australians in the narrative of Australian MMA, but at the end of the day, when you're Quillan Salkilld, it's a fight you got to take. Now, would I have preferred him to take on Josh Togo from Australian Top Team? Yes, and unfortunately, this is where we sit, and I'm going to ramble a little bit here, but it felt like a couple of months ago, maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, we were going to have all these great fights. Abdalla taking on Kaan Ofli, or Kaan Ofli taking on Justin Van Heerden, or in the featherweight division, or Quillan Salkilld taking on Josh Togo, Matt Vaile taking on Luciano in the welterweights. It was all great, and something's happened. Whether it's promotions, whether it's we can't link it up, because like I said, it's not the UFC. We don't have UFC money. These guys aren't all full-time. Maybe you can't take a fight because you can't get a shift off work. That is the reality of Australian MMA. And that's why we're all obviously trying to build the sport, because we want these guys to be professional athletes so they can get paid accordingly and we can get all these fights to happen. But yeah, we're seeing a little bit of splintering. Like I said, love Jono Micallef. Think he's going to be a champ, but that fight should have been Vaile and Luciano. But now Luciano's off with that fight. Like I said, we'll find out why in the back end of that. Vaile will probably be off fighting, I don't know, someone random in Shuriken or the New Zealand promotion. And then you've got Kaan, Ofli, Justin Van Heerden, Abdalla, Biayda. We wanted that to be a bloody triple threat. Abdalla looks like he's going to have a fight somewhere else. Kaan, Ofli's fighting in Turkey, which, I mean, you can't blame him. They'll probably get more money, all that sort of stuff, but it still comes back to the fact of the reason why we want to make Australian MMA the most lucrative, because then all the fights will happen here. And then, of course, Eternal MMA announced that Justin Van Heerden will be taking on Ethan Thomas, who, great fighter. He just beat Rod Costa, I believe is a Australian wrestling team. Like, he's that good. But narrative-wise, it wasn't the fight we wanted. So right now it's kind of all sort of splintered. And then Quillan Salkilld, me and Callum Potter, like I said, you can check out the other podcasts. We've wanted Quillan Salkilld versus Josh Togo for a very long time. And Josh Togo looks like he's probably going to be... I mean, I saw a post where someone tagged him in UAE Warriors. So he's probably going to fight over there. You know what I mean? And so we got a great fighter in Australia not fighting Quillan Salkilld. That should be the fight. And I'm sure I'll find out that from Togo's side, maybe Eternal didn't offer it. I'll find out from Eternal's side that he didn't want it. Or it's... Right now there seems to be a little bit of splintering in Australian MMA. I don't like it. I obviously like all these guys getting paid and all these guys getting the fights that they need to stay active and whatnot. But look, I'm excited that like 5 to 6 major fights got dropped in both Eternal and Hex. It is a good time to be an Australian MMA fan, but there's another level we can go to, guys. And you all know that. And if you're balls deep in the sport like me and 17 other people are, I love all these fights. Like I said, Jono Micallef is going to be an absolute star. So do not for a second think I think this is going to be a bad fight. I don't. But we wanted Luciano versus Vaile. We wanted Quillan Salkilld versus Josh Togo. We wanted Justin Van Heerden versus Kaan Ofli. Or versus Abdalla, or Abdalla versus Kaan. We wanted that. We don't get it right now. But I tell you what, it is not the end of the world. There is some huge fights coming. There is some huge promotional news from both Hex, Eternal, even Beatdown. All these promotions are coming up. It is a good time to be an Australian MMA fan. And hey, look, even the bangers that... And I love Anthony Drillich and Frank Jankowski. And of course, I'd love to see Stuart Nickel, who just won a Beatdown, face one of these guys, or... Maybe even Sean Gauchi goes back to flyweight and whatnot. And that was it. And the Drillich versus Jankowski flyweight championship fight is going to be an absolute banger. But was it going to sell out HBF Stadium in Perth? I don't know. I don't think so. But the fights they've announced is amazing. Wes Capper is going to be back. I mean, if you saw him against John Bruin, you know how exciting Wes Capper is. He's been fighting for 15 years. He's an absolute cracker of a fighter. I mean... create a super lightweight championship and just give it to him, because I think he performs best there. Of course, you've got Quillan Salkilld versus Brett Pastore, or Pasta, I don't even know. I'm sure I'll learn much about him as we head on in. But it's still going to be a cracker of a fight, man. And there's even an X Factor fight in there with Dan Jones, who's 8-0, 9-0, questionable. I don't know, he's been fighting for that long. But he's undefeated. He was... almost like the prodigy before there was one 5-6 years ago. Like, I don't think people realize how good Dan Jones actually is out of Luestro Combat Academy. He was back in the Synergy days when Ramel Luestro was there. Dan Jones is special, man. Him and his brother Luke, like, they're special in every aspect of the word. They are incredible fighters. They both could be absolute superstars. Dan Jones, I think, is the one that has put it together just that little bit more. And so to see him go up against Seb Szalay, who, you know, he was trained by Sully the Hulk back in Perth, trained at Hun Martial Arts, spent some time at Wolves down with Steve Walton, you know, formerly a lot of the Mac 1 guys. And then now he's over at Freestyle MMA with Windang with Joey Lopez, of course, training with Justin Van Heerden. Like, I even put it up the other day on Australian MMA on the Instagram page. Quillan Salkilld, Cody Haddon training together, and then David Martinez and Sean Gauchi training together. Like, every gym, you know, it's such a big sport and such a big country, but yet everyone is right there, and iron sharpens iron. And I'll tell you what, I'm rambling a bit, but if you're still listening, you just love this sport. And feel free to hit me up. Go to australianmma.com.au or hit us up on the socials and just talk. I just love talking about this sport. I'm sure someone will be mad and will call me tomorrow and say I'm an idiot, which I also welcome. But this sport has never been better, personally. I think the promotions are at a level that can give us these fights, and the fighters are at a level where they are businesses, man. I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman, or whatever Jay-Z says. A lot of these professional fighters need to look after that aspect, and I think they're doing a tremendous job. The promotions are doing amazing. Cam O'Neill, as crazy as that bastard is, he's insane and he loves the sport. And whether you agree with some of the things that happen or you don't, the man, there's no one more passionate. And I say there's no one that knows more about Australian MMA than a random Scottish dude. Look, and then Jacob Watts, who is like 12 and he's running a promotion. Like, it's incredible. Like, and he never misses a fight. You've got absolute nerds like myself, Callum Potter, the boys at From the Stands, even Fight News Australia when they get around to doing stuff. Like, it's incredible how passionate everyone is about the sport. And now I know I sound like an absolute loser, and like I said, you've probably stopped listening a long time ago, but there has never been a better time to be a fan. But it's at an 8, and we still got 2 more levels to go. And fighters, promoters, fans, keep getting angry. Keep riling yourselves up. Keep the heat going, because the more people that are invested, the more money that is invested, the more money that is given to fighters, promoters, and anyone involved, and the fights only get better. And at the end of the day, we fucking love this shit. So, I hope you guys enjoyed my rambling. Do hit up Eternal MMA, Hex, fucking just message Matt Vaile. There's no better time to be an Australian MMA fan. I hope you guys like my little ramble. Follow me on YouTube or the podcast, or hit us up on Instagram, AustralianMMA_. Or, I mean, I'm working on this as well, www.australianmma.com.au. I'm Mitchell Tinley. Like I said, be safe and keep fighting.